It's always been fascinating to watch truly elite players at the safety position. Remember the late great Sean Taylor? How about Hall of Famers like Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu? Or current young stars like Jamal Adams or Derwin James? Eric Berry's prime years, Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas in the Legion of Boom days. But there was a very short period of time during the mid-2000s where a man that stood only 5 feet 8 inches tall was being considered as one of the top safeties in the league. He was named AP Defensive Player of the Year in 2007, beating out Hall of Famers like Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, and Brian Dawkins that year. He's got many nicknames: the Hitman, the Eraser, but unfortunately, Bob Sanders has been largely forgotten by today's NFL fans. He's become one of those guys where in order to truly appreciate his greatness, you kind of had to be there, you know what I'm saying? But today we're gonna change all that as we take a look back at Bob Sanders' life and career. Bob unfortunately didn't have very many healthy years in the NFL. His NFL career was short-lived, but he accomplished more in only 2 full seasons than most players will accomplish in a full career. This is what happened to Bob Sanders. Cue the Wayne.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Damon Bob Sanders was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, also the home of Fred Biletnikoff, you know, the cat that this award is named after. Bro, check it out. Bob was the 7th of 8 kids, so he had a ton of siblings to play with and, you know, get into fights with. Speaking of fights, Bob's dad was a boxer and later worked in a factory. This is very likely where Bob got a lot of his toughness from. Bob Sanders was one of those small, compact, hyper athletic kids. You know them badass kids that can like run up the wall and flip off of it? He was one of them. One time when Bob was around 5 or 6 years old, he was trying to be the kid that was bigger and older in a bike race. They was going down a hill and Bob was gaining on dude. The problem is he had his sights set a little too intently on the dude in front of him, and instead of passing him, he actually slammed into him and completely flipped off his bike. He hit the ground face first and he fell so damn hard that he had like hundreds of little pebbles basically embedded in his face. He went home bleeding and his mom was ready to rush him to the hospital, but his dad walked in, took him in the other room and spent hella time just getting all the pebbles out, you know, peeling the dead skin off, put some ointment on his face, give him some moisture so that thing could heal up. So his mom turns her back for a split second. Bob Sanders sneaks back out the house to go and challenge the older kid again. And that story pretty much tells you everything you need to know about Bob Sanders. Bob started taking football seriously around the 6th grade. He began to idolize a legend of the same last name, Barry Sanders. Barry stood 5'8", ironically the same size Bob would grow to be. But it never stopped Barry from slaying giants out on the field. And Bob decided he would pattern his game the exact same way. He dreamed of one day becoming a starting running back in the NFL, but there was one problem. He couldn't even become the starting running back on his 6th grade team, most likely due to his size. So one day Bob came up with a plan. In practice, he decided to jump on defense, and he hit the starting running back so damn hard that this poor kid did not play the next 3 or 4 games. At that point, the team had no choice but to start the backup, and we all know who the backup was. It was Bob Sanders. He was starting now. I'm sure Bob didn't realize it at the time, but the method in which he'd gotten this job that he so coveted had offered a glimpse into his actual future in the sport. When he hit high school, he made varsity as a freshman, but he didn't really come into his own until his senior season. He was still chasing running back dreams at the time, and he was a star at the position, rushing for 1,100 yards and 15 touchdowns. He got his team all the way to the state title game, where they lost their first game of the season, falling short of the championship. But the coach had recognized Bob's defensive talents as well and played him at DB, where Bob had tons of crowd-pleasing hits. Still, in Bob's mind, he believed he would become the next Barry Sanders. Bob didn't have many scholarship offers when Iowa stepped in and offered a full ride for Bob to play defense. At that point, he quickly shifted gears and said, hell yeah. Bob took to the strong safety position quickly, earning all Big Ten honorable mention as a freshman. After his freshman season, Bob will become a mainstay on the actual all Big Ten list. No more that honorable mention stuff. Despite being the smallest cat on the field, Bob Sanders put fear in the hearts of all opposing offenses. Dude was everywhere. He was coming like a damn missile with no regard for his own safety. You know what I'm saying? This would backfire later in his career, but At the same time, it made him the player that he was. Bob Sanders had one speed: explosive, reckless, abandon. Okay? And if you ain't scared of nothing on the football field, you should be leery of a cat who's more concerned with causing damage to you than he is about protecting himself. Dude went full tilt every damn play and was an endless ball of energy. To give you an example of his endless motor, this man recorded 25 tackles against Antoine Randall and the Indiana Hoosiers in 2001. That was just his sophomore season in college, and he led his team in tackles and interceptions. Iowa's 2002 season was the best of Bob's tenure. He made first team All Big Ten as usual, leading the 5th ranked rushing defense in the nation. But I do have to mention that year, Iowa's offense was the best it had been in years, bro. Quarterback Brad Banks finished 2nd in the Heisman voting, and his go-to guy was another really good tight end from the 2000s that some of y'all might remember, Dallas Clark. Dallas and Bob would later become teammates again in the league, so that's pretty cool. And they also had future Pro Bowl guard Eric Steinbach protecting their quarterback, so these dudes was solid, man. They went 8-0 in the Big Ten, 11-2 overall, but lost in the Orange Bowl to USC. During Bob's senior year, the team went 10-3, so a slightly worse regular season record, but they were able to take out Florida in the Outback Bowl. While he was at Iowa, this cat actually improved his 40 time from a 4.6 when he got there to a 4.35. On top of that, he improved his vertical from 30 inches to a 44-inch vertical. Those are the type of numbers that'll make an NFL team completely forget about the fact that you're only 5'8", okay? And yes, teams were concerned with his size as he measured in at 5'8", 206 pounds. But his combine numbers was off the chart. When you mix that with the leadership and the college production, that gotta boost your draft stock. It did, and the Indianapolis Colts drafted him in the 2nd round, making him the 44th overall pick in the 2004 NFL Draft. Bob's rookie season in the league is kind of a microcosm of his entire career. Dude flashed some amazing moments. Despite not even being a full-time starter in year 1, he recorded 9 tackles in his first game. He also had an 11-tackle game versus Houston, and he brought a big-time spark when he was on the field. Unfortunately, he was barely on the damn field. A foot and knee injury would limit him to only 5 games as a rookie. At the time, it was seen as a minor hiccup, but little did anybody know that knee injury would become the centerpiece for Bob never playing an entire season in the NFL. So Bob only played 5 games as a rookie, but he did return once the playoffs rolled around. And once he did, it was clear that the bright lights would never be a problem for Dude. He played pretty damn well, not only for a rookie, but a rookie who has only played 5 games. He hadn't had the full 16 games to even get acclimated to the NFL, and he's playing well in the playoffs. That's a good sign. 2005 was one of Bob's healthiest years. He played 14 regular season games, and in only his 2nd season, Dude racked up 91 tackles and was voted into the Pro Bowl. Peyton Manning was an absolute problem at this time. Dude was carving teams up, and a lot of opposing teams would simply try to run the ball to keep Peyton on the sideline. But when Bob Sanders was in the game, that did not work out as well. Dude was basically like an extra linebacker busting heads out there. He racked up 10 tackles in the division playoff round versus the Steelers too, but the Colts came up short that year. The next season, Bob's physical play caught up to him. His recklessness made him the player he was, but his body couldn't stand up to the punishment. He suffered a knee injury and only played 4 games during the 2006 regular season. But, per usual, when the playoffs rolled around, Bob gutted it out and played. Now check this out, ain't this wild? Dude ended up playing the same amount of postseason games that year as he played regular season games. 4 regular season, 4 postseason. Even crazier is that it didn't seem to matter to Bob whether it was the first game of the season or the damn Super Bowl. His regular season stats was super similar to his postseason stats. Check this out. Through 4 regular season games, Dude had 28 tackles, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass deflections, and a pick. Through 4 postseason games, he had 22 tackles, a forced fumble, 4 pass deflections, and 2 picks. If this man could have just been healthy, bro, I'm telling you, dog. With Bob back in the lineup, the Colts went from one of the worst defenses in the league to holding the Chiefs and then the Ravens to less than double digits in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Then they got by the Patriots and held Brady to 232 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And then Bob Sanders, a 3rd-year guy who had only once played more than 5 games in a season, helped the Colts become Super Bowl champion. And he wasn't just there as a part of the team. Don't get it twisted, Bob Sanders was a huge reason that the Colts were able to win that game. The man forced 2 turnovers, a forced fumble in the first quarter that helped turn the momentum, and he got an interception late. And I'm a Peyton Manning fan, but with him throwing for less than 300 yards, only 1 touchdown and 1 interception, I really felt like Bob, with 2 forced turnovers, could have been considered the MVP of that game. With that said, I think he only had 3 tackles, so maybe if he had a few more tackles to go along with the turnovers that he created, but even still, I think he has a case, you know what I'm saying? Now, for those of y'all who don't remember Dwight Freeney, dude was an absolute beast of a pass rusher who had one of, if not the best, pass rush spin move of all time. He was a multiple-time Pro Bowler, multiple-time first-team All-Pro. Dude was a dog. He was another huge key to the Colts defense, but he ended up getting injured in 2007. And a lot of people actually believe that was one of the worst things that could have happened to Bob Sanders. After Freeney got injured, Bob was asked to play closer to the line of scrimmage more often. And the theory is, a small guy who already has injury problems is now banging with bigger bodies at a higher frequency. And it was only a matter of time before he got injured. With that said, surprisingly, this was the healthiest season of Bob Sanders' entire career. We're going to talk about the cons of that in a second, but first, let's discuss the pros, right? Bob Sanders only missed 1 game in that 2007 season, and that helped get him a major contract. He signed a $37.5 million contract with $20 million guaranteed about midway through the season. I just got to point this out. That's a great move by his agent. Giving somebody with the injury history of a Bob Sanders, getting $20 million guaranteed, that's a good move. A healthy Bob Sanders meant trouble for the rest of the league, and dude wreaked havoc. His 96 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 6 deflections, and 2 interceptions was enough to win him Defensive Player of the Year. And he really ran away with it, to be honest. He got 31 first place votes. The next 2 highest people were Patrick Kearney and Albert Haynesworth. They had 4 first place votes apiece. So it's great. Bob stayed healthy for damn near the whole season. He got paid and he won Defensive Player of the Year. But remember when I said the absence of Dwight Freeney helped and hurt Bob Sanders? And I obviously can't prove this. This is just a theory. If Dwight Freeney had been there, he could have possibly kept Bob a little bit cleaner, and he may have actually not gotten hurt in the first game of the playoffs. So yeah, after a full season of health, dude sustained the injury in the first round of the playoffs that year, and while he played through it, he was largely ineffective. That 2007 version of Bob Sanders is one of the best safeties I've ever seen. Unfortunately, 2007 was the last anyone would ever see of that version of Bob Sanders. The knee injury he sustained during his rookie season would often cause his knee to swell, causing Bob to miss weeks at a time. Also, his play style mixed with his small stature would see him banged up pretty much all the time. From high ankle sprains to torn biceps, I'm gonna assume some undiagnosed concussions, because given his play style, I mean, come on, it was inevitable. Here's the crazy thing. Following that 2007 Defensive Player of the Year season, Bob Sanders would only play 11 more games in his entire NFL career. Now, we're not talking about a cat that was older once he won Defensive Player of the Year. He was drafted in 2004. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 2007 and then only played 11 more games after that season. That's crazy, bro. And those 11 games didn't come in 1 year. They didn't come in 2 years. They were spread out over 4 more seasons. 11 games in 4 more seasons, bro. For perspective, Bob Sanders technically played 8 seasons in the NFL from 2004 to 2011. But if we being real, he only started 48 regular season games in his entire career. That is the equivalent of only 3 full seasons, bro. The man had 2 almost full seasons, 14 games in 2005 and 15 games in 2007. And despite that, he still has a Defensive Player of the Year, 2 All-Pros, and a Super Bowl on his resume. What a dog, bro. A truly great talent whose size never limited him on the field, but unfortunately that same size and fragility did oftentimes keep him off the field. It just really sucks, and it's one of the craziest things to think about, the what if scenario. If this man just had average health, not pristine, just average health, what he would have been able to accomplish in the NFL. After being released by the Colts after the 2010 season, Bob signed with the Chargers. After 2 games, that knee swole right back up, and next thing you knew, Bob was ending his season on IR for the 5th time in a row. Since his retirement back in 2011, Bob Sanders has been living well and enjoying life. Since he retired, he and his wife have had 4 kids. 4 kids since retirement in like 8 or 9 years. So Bob retired, but he's still working, you know what I'm saying? He's been protecting his bread and actually still owns the house he bought as a rookie, meaning he was able to save and invest most of that 20 mil he got back in 2007. Once again, shout out to his agent. Injuries ruined what could have easily been a Hall of Fame career. But for those of y'all who missed out on the short but stellar career of Bob Sanders, there are a few players in the league today that remind me of dude, but none more than Ravens safety Earl Thomas. And he's getting a little bit older now, but if you watch his Legion of Boom days, there are so many plays where you definitely see the spirit of the hitman, spirit of the eraser, Bob Sanders. My name is FlemLo Raps. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. I'm out at you next time, fellas.